So, Vanessa, where and when were you born? I know you were born on my father's birthday, a little bit later than him.
Wow. I was born on 15th November 1996, and I was born in Kampala.
In Uganda.
Yes, please. Kampala, Uganda.
And do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I do have siblings.
Where I'm interested in birth order because a lot of times achieving women are the firstborn.
Yeah, I have four siblings, and I'm the firstborn.
Me too.
Wow.
And you are you finished with university? You majored in business.
Yeah, I did business administration and I majored in marketing, and I graduated last year.
Congratulations. That's such a good feeling. No more
Thank
finals.
you.
And why did you pick business? And what are you doing now with it?
Well, I think I really picked business because I grew up seeing my parents do so much when it comes to business. So I think I just probably inherited it from my parents and just got the love for doing business. I think that was really the greatest push to me to study business studies.
Hmm. So they're both have their own businesses or work in business, both parents?
No, mom helps out dad, and it's a solar business.
Wonderful. Could I just ask you about that as a kind of a end note? Um, Solar panels, on one hand, are so wonderful because they're an alternative source. On the other hand, they have so many toxic metals and are hard to recycle when they're not useful anymore. What's your understanding of the kind of the evolution of solar panels and solar power?
Well, when it comes to solar panels and solar energy, I personally believe that it's a great way to moving towards a more sustainable future for everyone because, first of all, it's more affordable for people, and the other thing, it does not involve the burning of fossil fuels. So basically, it helps us to reduce on the emissions in the atmosphere, and then the fact that it doesn't use a lot of water for its production, and we have so much water scarcity, and I believe that we need to protect the existing fresh waters, and production of electricity, the one that we see, is uses a lot of water first of all, and it's really not sustainable enough. It's harmful to the environment. So I really believe in a transition to renewable energy in schools and in households. Actually, I'm running a project that involves the installation of renewable energy, that is solar, in schools. And so far, I've been able to work on two schools where we bring this transition to renewable energy to the schools, and just do the installation at literally no charge.
And who is funding the project? How is it paid for, the materials and labor?
Well, the project is fully monitored and financed by the internet, so it really gets its donations from the people who are willing to do something about the project. Now, for the finished two schools, I happen to talk about the project, and a specific person from the internet offered to cater for two schools, and that is how we were able to complete the two schools, and hopefully we can work on more schools.
Roughly, how many schools have been installed the panels at this point?
So far, we've only worked on two schools.
And then does the if they generate revenue, does the revenue go back to the schools to buy books or whatever?
Generate revenue from the solar.
Yeah.
Now, basically, the solar, they use it for the lighting, of course. the lighting in the classes, and also in the rooms or in whatever the school needs for electricity. And it's really not for commercial purposes. It's just mainly to help them transition to a more sustainable way of living.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. And then, but what about the issue of disposing of the panels once they're no longer effective in work?
I think that at the end of the day, anything that can be disposed of can still be recycled. I think it really needs us as people to really push our minds to being so innovative and creative, because I believe that if they grow old and they have to be disposed of, there is a way a school or a family can use them for recycling.
Mm. Um, is that your main thrust now after graduation? Is installing the solar panels in schools? Are there other projects that you're working on?
Well, the other project is together with the solar project. This one is about the installation of institutional stoves. These are like eco-friendly stoves that ensure clean cooking for students, and also ensure that the amount of firewood that is used by a school in a term is reduced, hence cutting down on the trees that are being destroyed and brought down. So basically, if a school has this stove, if it was using 5 trucks of firewood in a term, with this stove it will use 2 trucks of firewood. So currently, those are the two projects that I'm working on, plus also my climate activism.
Mm, wonderful. And how did you get involved in understanding the climate crisis? Just knowing about it? Was it in school or from media? And then what made you decide I've got to do something, not just learn about it, but take action?
Well, climate activism, of course, was something very new to me. It was something that I hadn't grown up seeing in my community or in my family. So I must say it was really a process for me becoming a climate activist. I remember I wanted to do something that could cause change in the lives of the people in my community, and that was in 2018. So I started carrying out research to read about the problems that people face and to find out about the ways that we can solve these problems and make these people's lives a better kind of living. So I found that climate change was one of those problems, and the truth is, I was really surprised. This is simply because in school, of course, I've studied about climate change, I've studied about global warming, but then it is told us something that either happened in the past or something that is coming in the far future that we don't have to worry about. And here I was reading that climate change is here now, climate change is affecting people's lives right now. So I decided to dig more into it, to get to know the causes, to get to know the impacts, and to get to know how people's livelihoods are changed when they experience a climate disaster. When I found out about some of the impacts, I realized that there were communities, for example, in the Mount Elgon area of my country, that have experienced some of these impacts, the changing weather patterns, bringing about shorter rain seasons, and with shorter rain seasons come heavy rainfall and flooding and landslides. And I had seen all these things on television news, but actually I never really related them to climate change, and I never really understood why they happened. So when I realized that there were people who are looking at climate change in the face right now, I decided that I had to do something about it. I remember reading about ways of creating awareness of a challenge in our community, and that is how I got to know about the Fridays for Future movement. And I decided that I would also start striking in my country and try and create awareness of the problems that were affecting people's lives, and to see if any change would be brought and to see if any impact would be caused. So basically, that is how I ended up becoming a climate activist. And I think it's over a year now that I'm doing activism.
Mm. I read that for a while you were the only one striking in front of the government building, and that takes a lot of courage. What is there about your personality, your who you are, that gives you the courage to stand up alone in front of Parliament building?
Well, I think when it comes to my personality, I must say I can be quite confident when I decide to. But then, growing up as a child, I remember I was so shy and so much of an introvert and always to myself. Actually, if you talk to some of the friends close, they knew how much I feared had to stand in front of everyone and just speak up and talk about what how you got your research and the findings from your research work. So it was really I wasn't really the confident or the bold kind of child as I grew up. But I think that when I started climate activism, there is a certain kind of boldness that came and a certain kind of confidence. Honestly, I don't know where it came from. And I just knew that I would do this, but of course it took time. I found out about the climate strikes in 2018, but as I've told you, my childhood history on my personality, I was really scared to go out to the streets. So it took me time to decide to actually do the climate
Come on, Skype.
strikes. But then I remember the first. Can you hear me?
Oh, the last I heard was then I remembered.
Okay,
It
okay.
took you. Okay.
Yeah, then I remember that I found out about the climate strikes in 2018, but then because of my childhood personality, I was really so scared to step out. But then in the first week of January 2019, it just hit me, and I'm like, oh my God, I've wasted so much time. I would have already started doing climate activism, but because I was scared, I didn't step out. So I decided whatever comes, I'll just go and do it and see how it goes. So I remember my first strike was actually with my siblings. We went together, and it was actually on a Sunday because we felt like, oh my God, we had already missed Friday, and next Friday was so far, so let's just do this on a Sunday, and then we'll follow up every Friday. Yeah, so that is what happened. Unfortunately, my siblings had to go back to school because they were in boarding school, and I had to continue by myself. So that is what made me a lone striker for some time doing the climate activism by myself. And I think the more I did the strikes and the more I faced my fear of the people and the public, I think the stronger it made me and the more confident it made me.
So, did you start striking in front of the government building or at the university, or where did you first start holding up signs or whatever it was?
For the first strike, I remember, as I said, I had it with my siblings. So we did four locations. We striked in four locations, and the first location was a stage, like a public transportation stage. There are also some supermarkets around there, and then for the second location, it was also a stage, but in front of a mall. Then the third one was also a stage in front of some luxurious mall because we thought that if these people who have the money and who take some of these decisions that are that are danger to our planet see this, they'll realize that we are in a crisis and they have to make some changes in their daily lives. And then our final location was also it's a large supermarket. It's in Nakawa. We did the last strike there as well, and then we got back home. So the following strikes, I really don't remember when I did the next strike where I was at the parliament, but it came after the first strike.
Got it. And what did you hold up signs that had slogans on them? And what were the effective slogans that made people, I better think about this?
I remember some of the strikes that sorry some of the strike signs that we had. Um, I had some of my siblings, and I remember also some cousins joining us, and some of them had "Nature is life." Then the other is "Climate strike now." In my country, people are so used to political strikes, so they were like, climate strike? What are you talking about? What is that? What do you mean by climate strike? Because they were so used to so much of the political strikes. So I think the word climate strike now and really captured their attention. And one of the placards also had "Thank you for the global warming." So basically, this would ring in someone's mind that, okay, why would she thank us for the global warming? Is she being sarcastic or is she being real? And yet, the real sense is that I am being sarcastic holding this. I mean, thank you for destroying the planet. So it's more like holding you accountable for the mess that that has been done. So I think those were some of the signs that captured people's attention.
It seems like a photograph is a really powerful symbol. Like, I guess the common one is the polar bear on the ice floe. And I wondered if you found images that really make people pay attention as well as words.
Well, we did so much of the words, and we had really few images. I'm not so good at art, so I'm really not at drawing. So we just did the words, and we drew probably some trees and all that on some of the placards. Yeah.
What's the kind of official position of the Ugandan government about climate change? Like in Brazil and the U.S., countries like that, the government under these autocrats denies that climate change is a human problem. And I wonder if your government at least acknowledges that, oh yeah, humans are responsible for this change.
When I'm asked when it comes to my government, of course they acknowledge that climate change is real, but I'm not so sure if they acknowledge that it is brought about by our human actions. I doubt that they believe that it's brought about by human actions, and either they don't know or they know but they're silent about it because what we do, most people here, when you talk about climate change, all they know is the trees. That is all that most people know. When you say climate change, you're talking about cutting down trees. But I think there is more to climate change than the trees. There is really more, and that is what most people don't know. And I believe some leaders also don't know. They really don't understand the relationship between climate change and fossil fuels.
The silver lining of the pandemic is that it demonstrates that if we don't drive and fly and take cruises on big vessels, that the climate responds and pollution goes way down, and you can see in a city instead of having smog everywhere. So I'm wondering if you think of the pandemic as being a teacher in a way.
Well, there's so many things to learn from this pandemic, and they clearly show that people are able and they are capable of learning to coexist with other species on the planet. Many times we, the humans, we get so greedy and even encroach on the habitats of other species on this planet. But then this pandemic is clearly shown that people are able to adjust. They are able to make new decisions, make out new work plans in order to of course save their lives. But this shows that they are able to coexist with the existing animal species and plant species and tree species. And this is something, of course, that has shown that we as humans, and especially the leaders, it has shown that leaders are capable of listening to the science because they realize that with this pandemic, if they listen to what the scientists say and the guidelines that are being given to stop the spread of the virus, they know that they'll be able to curb the virus and be able to kick it out of their countries. That is by putting lockdowns and making people stay at home. So they actually believe in the science, meaning that when it comes to climate change, they just choose not to believe in it because their interests are at stake and whatever they want to achieve is at stake if they're to address the climate crisis. But then they tend to forget that climate change is already affecting people's lives and that we can still live in a world that caters for everyone and looks out for every community and makes sure that everyone has access to basic needs like clean air, like health facilities, like food, shelter, clean water, among others. So this pandemic, of course, it has showed so much that our leaders are capable of doing. And of course, it's not something that we should celebrate. We shouldn't have the act rejuvenating at the cost of many people's lives. We are losing so many people when it comes to this pandemic. So our leaders shouldn't have to wait for such problems and such issues so that we can get the earth to where it should be. We can make the world a better place for everyone. Because right now, it is not better because people are dying, people's lives are being destroyed, people can't even bury their loved ones. So this is something that the leaders really need to look in. There are better ways of addressing the climate crisis. And also it showed that if the leaders are willing to take action and address a crisis, then they are capable. They have the resources, they have the money. Many times they say that, oh my God, addressing climate change is so costly. But we are seeing them addressing and taking care of this pandemic. That is because it affects them as well, and it's not choosing specific people. When it comes to the climate crisis, right now it's affecting the most vulnerable communities, the marginalized communities, the communities that are least had, the communities that are least developed. So, I mean, the ones in charge haven't faced the direct impacts of climate change. So this has not pushed them to a point of taking action. But the thing is, this pandemic has shown that a pandemic comes. We knew about this pandemic in January, but government leaders were silent about it. They didn't choose to take any precautions because they thought that it would only be contained in one country. Little did they know how fast it would escalate. So it is the same thing with the climate crisis. It may be affecting marginalized, vulnerable communities right now, but a time is going to come when this crisis is going to escalate and affect everyone, and we'll be in a worse situation than we are in right now. So what we need is for the leaders to will, because if they will, they are capable. They really have the resources and the money. So that's not an excuse, and we cannot afford not to take climate action.
And what that means is that we have to vote for wise leaders who are willing to acknowledge and institute something like what the U.S. calls the Green New Deal. But young people often don't vote, at least in the States. And I wondered if that's a problem. Young people tend to be more liberal, but not to vote. So the old people vote and put in people like Trump. So is that an issue in Uganda that young people don't vote as much as older people?
Well, I think it's an issue that literally cuts across. Young people, they speak so much when it comes to social media. Many of them speak so much, but they never actually go to the ground to do the voting. We've seen that in many countries, and I think that young people really need to change this. They need to leave their comfort zones and step out, make those lines, and vote. You know, because at the end of the day, however much you speak on social media that this is the best candidate for the position, maybe in parliament or in the government, if you just talk on social media, that won't put that person in office. You have to actually step out and do the voting, and that is what young people oftentimes forget.
Oh, why do you think that is? Some people said, oh, they're just think government is corrupt, they're cynical, they have a lot of, they're working, going to school. I don't know. Why do you think it is that they don't vote as much?
I think that sometimes young people don't vote, maybe because their don't push them to vote as well, because parents play a very big role sometimes in the lives of their children. So, I mean, if I'm on my phone and I feel lazy to actually go and make that line and vote, you the parent, you have to push me and tell me this is for your future, this is for your life. So young children sometimes they do so much on social media, for example, in forms of activism, but sometimes they need help from the adults to actually push them to do the voting. And I think sometimes some of them are they just choose not to go out and vote. They just choose not to, either because they don't want to or because it's hectic for them.
Hmm. You started Youth for Future Africa and Rise Up. Could you tell us about the organizations that you started and where they are now?
These organizations are in Uganda. When I started Youth for Future, that was last year. It was mainly to engage the youth in my country to be able to join climate activism because many of them in the beginning had an issue that the climate movement is so full of young children, it is so full of teenagers, and some of them were out of the teenage bracket. Some of them were either 20 or 21, and they were feeling like, I really don't fit in that. I really don't fit in that. And I decided that, okay, don't worry, let's just do something youth for future. So is that okay with you? You'll be a youth, you'll feel okay, you'll feel involved, you'll feel like your voice really matters. And I think this should go out to every person out there. The fight against the climate crisis is not about the age. Because at the end of the day, art is our home, art is our responsibility, and we all play a part, and we can all play a part to cause the change, to cause the change in our planet and, in our environment and in our communities. So that was the main reason for starting the Youth for Future, to be able to involve other young people and so that they feel like their voice can actually make a difference.
So,
When it comes to the Rise Up was started at the beginning of this year, and it was mainly to help amplify the voices of African climate activists. I had personally seen there was a lacking when it comes to the voices in Africa, and many people were struggling so much to be heard. It is just so disturbing to see that those who are from the most affected communities are struggling the most to be heard. So I thought that maybe I can start this movement and see that maybe I can try and get them into the spaces of media or into organizations where they can, make their voice be heard when it comes to climate change and their climate activism. And the truth is, when I started this Rise Up, I really didn't know how I was going to do this, but I just knew that there was a way I could.
and what are examples of actions that the two groups have taken? What do you do? What are projects that you have done and are planning to do?
Well, for the two groups, what we are really doing, and literally the members are all the same.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, the members are all the same because at the end of the day, for the Rise Up, it's mainly to help amplify these voices that are already in Youth for Future. I don't know if I'm making sense.
So it but what I thought I heard you say is that Youth for Future is mainly Ugandan and Rise Up is for all sub-Saharan African activists. Is
Well,
that accurate?
well, when it comes to Rise Up, it welcomes everyone. Regardless of where you come from. Actually, right now, I work with some activists from Kenya when it comes to the Rise Up. And some of the things that we do, of course, we do the strikes every Friday. And for this pandemic, we've been doing so much of digital actions, posting videos with a message and posting photos with placards either on a daily basis. Doing interviews and posting them on YouTube, and also doing podcasts and sharing them to my followers and to the other platforms of Rise Up. So basically, that is what has been going on. And when it comes to the activists who are in Uganda, when it comes to the activists who are in Uganda, they help out so much in these projects that I already told you about, the installation of the solar and the stoves, because at the end of it all, you need someone to, help you out. You can't do it by yourself.
Mm-hmm. And are there specific actions that you're asking governments or businesses or large organizations to take? Do you have like a platform? We want, like the Green New Deal in the U.S. is we want build the infrastructure in a green way that provides green jobs, and it has a specific platform. And I wonder what you're asking for specifically.
Well, as an activist, my demands have always been very clear. I want climate education for the people in my community. This is simply because someone cannot run out of a burning house if they don't know that it's on fire, and they will not try to even stop the fire if they don't know that it's burning. So I believe that if more people are educated when it comes to the climate crisis and its impacts and its disasters, then we will have more people that we can work with in order to drive the movement forward with more strength and with more momentum. And then the other demands, of course, are ways of living, sustainable communities that build resilience and be able to reduce on the impact of the climate crisis, because many people's livelihoods are destroyed when these climate disasters happen, and these challenges, more challenges are followed after climate disaster. So my demands are to also build more resilience in these communities that are affected the most. For example, if a community is affected so much by many dry spells and long dry spells, then okay, let's think about a resilience project. What can we do about this? Maybe let us try and construct some form of water harvesting so that in times of dry spells they can have access to water, and the women don't have to walk long distances to get water. So basically, I just want the governments to be able to bring about resilience in their communities, or to actually support projects that are bringing about resilience. And also the fact that I'm working on transition to renewable energy, that is something that I really want to see in schools and also in households, so that people can have a swift transition to renewable energy, to clean energy, that can be able to ensure sustainable ways of living. And then the final demand mainly goes to the bigger powers, the bigger powers, those who have the authority to actually just put an end to the fossil fuel industry. Because however much we build resilience, however much we make life so sustainable, as long as we still have the fossil fuel industry, we won't be able to stop the climate crisis.
Right. I think of, in the Bible, there's David and Goliath, the big giant, and David takes down the giant. I really mix. It's like the fossil fuel companies are the giant, and we're the little
Yeah.
David throwing rocks. When you were in COP in Madrid last this year, what did you learn from that in terms of how we make change on a global level? Were you encouraged? Were you discouraged? What did you get from COP?
Well, from COP, I must say that the activist side, I really did so much actions, and so many actions outside the COP and inside the COP as well. And also, to me, it was a kind of a disappointment, because it made me realize that the leaders speak so much, they promise so much, but then they deliver so little. And I feel like it's more of motivating. They say that, oh my God, the children and the young people are doing so much. They are helping out. They're showing us that the planet is at risk. They're showing us that the earth is in danger. They're doing everything that they can. And the next thing you know is they're actually not taking action. So to me, it was very disappointing, because I went with so much hope, but then it was all just drained. And yeah, I feel like they make so much of promises, but they deliver so little.
What was it like being in Devos with all those big rich people from around the world who have a lot of economic power? Were they any more able to think about let's actually do something, or was it just talk, talk, talk there as well?
As I say that it's always about the talk, and it will always be about the talk, because at this point these leaders, they are not willing. We just need their will. When they get the will, they'll be able to take the action. But right now, they're not willing. Even those large economic powers and the people who hold the authority in the business world, they're not ready to let go of some of the activities that are draining our planet. But I must say that there are those that try so much to, bring sustainability in their businesses, but we expect much from that.
Mm. What else I always think about is that we have solutions to all the world's problems like hunger and the environment, but not the will. And then I think there are 8 rich men who have as much wealth as half the human population. It's so burdensome to think of trying to change that entrenched, unfair system. So I wonder how you keep going when you're facing Goliath, the monster, all the time.
Well, of course, speaking from the story that you've talked about, David was really driven by the God that he had. So I'm a Christian and I believe so much in God. So that is one of my motivations, because I know that at the end of the day we shall win, and we'll be able to make it and be able to get the change that we need. Because if David defeated Goliath, that means we are also able to defeat the fossil fuel industry. And also the fact that I have dreams, I have hope, I have things I really want to see in the future, but I cannot see those things with a future that is so uncertain. So that keeps me pushing as well. And then the fact that there are so many young people from different parts of the world demanding for the same thing that I want. We all have the same goal, the same vision. I think it's so inspiring to know that I am not alone. So it really keeps me moving.
Why do you think it is that girls and young women are at the forefront of the climate activism movement? Why is that? Where are the boys?
I think this is mainly because the girls and the women are affected the most when it comes to the impacts of climate change. Speaking from my community, it is the girls, it is the women that do most of the house chores, making sure food is on the table, making sure water is available at home. And in the case of occurrence of a disaster, many of them lose their farms, lose their crops, and lose everything that they have worked so hard to provide for their families. So they will have to switch to other ways of, trying to get food for their families. Some of them will have to walk long distances in order to get water for their families. Now, when you look at the girl child, sometimes I was reading an article that was talking about climate breaks, and it clearly talked about how some families are pushed so much into poverty by the climate disasters that they end up giving up some of their children for marriage. And guess who the victim will always be? It is always the girl child, because when you give up the girl child, they expect some bride price. So when I look at all these things and how the women are affected the most, you see, in my community, women and girls are not allowed to climb trees. But then in the case of occurrence of a flood, you find that the quickest way to survive the flood is by climbing a tree. So that means that out of the people that will die during that flood, if one man dies, 5 women may die, or even 10 women may die because they cannot climb the tree. And you find that some of these women are found heavily pregnant during these climate disasters. They cannot be able to save themselves because they have to save the unborn child, they have to save themselves, they have to save their other children as well. And then you also find that there are communities whereby women, of course, as I said, they are responsible for the chores at home. So you find that when they are hit by climate disasters, some women are single mothers. They are forced to go to the streets with their children. They are exposed to gender-based violence. So when you look at all these things, you realize how much the women and the girls are at the front line of the climate crisis. And I think that is the main reason for the girls and the women being at the forefront of the fight against climate change, because they really want to change their situations and make the world a better place for all girls and for all women.
Also, some people have suggested that environmentalism, tree hugging, is seen by young men and boys as feminine. So it's not cool to be a climate activist because you wouldn't be like seen as a real man. Do you think there's any of that going on or not?
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I think that being a real man is one who will fight to protect our planet and to protect uh, maybe the home for his family, and to be able to make sure that his children have a bright future. I would be so happy knowing that my father is taking care of my future and also the future of my siblings. So if they think that maybe having a tree or fighting for climate change is being feminist, then I think it's not real, and it doesn't make them real men. And I think being a feminist is cool as well. So
Yeah. So you think of yourself as a feminist?
well, I think I am. Many people take me to many people call me that sometimes because I speak so much about how women are affected by the climate crisis, and it's so disturbing, especially in the global south communities.
Mm-hmm. But do you claim the label for yourself?
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Everybody that I've talked to says it used to be a generation ago that young women would say, I'm not a feminist, but I believe in equality. But now they don't do the but. It's just, I'm a feminist. That's
Yeah.
great. Roughly, what percent of the active members of Youth for the Future and Rise Up are young women?
A young women,
Girls, yeah,
like
rather than male.
like girls in the rise up. Roughly, there are 10 girls,
And how many boys?
5 boys.
And what about Youth for the Future Africa?
No, that is for both.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So about half more. Um, what do you find? How do you balance getting things done, being organized, and not having a military kind of hierarchy with bosses and followers? That's an issue in feminist organizing since the 1960s. How do we get things done but not duplicate a military hierarchy with bosses? So how do you move forward and involve people but not spend hours on long meetings or that kind of thing?
Well, I think I schedule my time so well, and I always move with my book. That is why, for example, if someone wants an interview, I have to first check so that I see if they want this time slot. Then, if there is someone, then I can't maybe tell them to have the interview at that time because the two would collide. So I think it's really important to have like a certain kind of schedule, or call it a timetable, with listed activities for a day, and also not to overwhelm oneself like with so much work to do, because it can be so dreading to do so much work in a day, and to try and get as enough rest as much as possible, because at the end of the day, if you're working so much and you are not resting enough, you're gonna go crazy. It's going to seriously, at the end of the day, you just need to rest up and just time yourself and think about what you can do during the day, and just make sure you have uh, enough rest as much as possible, eat healthy, and connect with the right people. I mean, the people who bring the positivity out of you. It's also not good to have so much negativity in your life, because negativity just drains, and that is something that I keep so far away. Yeah, I think that is how I manage to just handle everything, because my book helps me a lot. I just keep notes on everything that I'm supposed to do for the day and the time that I'm supposed to do it so that I don't forget. Oh yeah, and also I'm good at setting an alarm. So what I do, if I have maybe interviews tomorrow, I make sure I set an alarm for all those interviews the night before. So tomorrow, like the next day, I set it like 15 minutes before the interview. So the moment it's rings like this. The moment the alarm goes off, I just check my book and I know, okay, I'm having this interview. I do, yeah. So I think that's what really enables me to handle everything and be able to do it all in the right way. And yeah.
How does the group make decisions? Like, how do they decide, well, our next strike is going to be da da da, or how are the way we're going to shape a media campaign is da da da? How are decisions made as a group?
Well, first of all, we make these decisions after having a meeting. We have either physical meetings, if it's possible, or Zoom meetings. Those also work as well, and they have worked so much during this period. So how we make decisions, basically, if I say or if someone says, I think we should do this. I think we should plan on how to maybe execute this campaign and be able to bring it to life. So we decide on those who want to, jump on the campaign. And, it's more like if you really want to do this, then let us all do it. And I think we've never really had a moment whereby someone's idea or someone's campaign has been rejected, because there is no such a thing like she makes the final decisions, he makes the final decisions. At the end of the day, if someone comes up with a campaign and it's for the better of the planet, then we just plan on how to execute it and choose a day on when to do it.
Mm. In my experience, a problem in organizing can be some people talk a lot in meetings. They just kind of want to be heard, and it makes the meetings spread out. And another problem is people will say they'll do something and don't. And a third problem is the group starts dividing as to who's the most pure in their ideology, who's the most this, and oh, well, that wasn't a feminist way to do that, or it wasn't a this way to do that. So I wondered if you face those issues of talkers, non-doers, who's the most pure or not, and how do you deal with them if you do?
Well, I think the fact that we are still a small team, we haven't really got to that point of experiencing those challenges.
Mm.
And I think many times these challenges come about when you are so many and everyone wants to make decisions, everyone wants to give ideas. And at the end of the day, if you're maybe 50 people, if you're to plan something, only 30 will show up. But I must say that this is not something that we've experienced. All the activists have always done what they're supposed to do, and they've always been very faithful in pushing for the climate activism. I think it's simply because they realize how much the future is at stake, and there is no room for making mistakes.
Mm. You mentioned that you have a lot of people who want to interview you. What are they from all over the world? What are they interested in? What do they want to know from you?
Yeah, of course, most of them want to know about like climate activism and how climate change affects the African continent. And yes, they are from different parts of the world.
Hmm, that's fun. You got a lot of publicity from the AP photograph that somehow didn't include you from Devos, I think it was. What? How could you use that as a learning lesson for the world? Has it? It must have been uncomfortable, but it also was a teaching tool, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that that experience can be a learning lesson for many people across the world, and especially when it comes to the climate movement, because we can't stand having the climate movement be represented as a movement that only involves the people from the global north, because at the end of the day, those who are affected the most are from the global south. And if we want to achieve climate justice, we have to make sure that everyone is included and every community is included. That is the only way that we can get climate justice. And if we want to get climate justice, we shouldn't forget about environmental justice. And environmental justice is mainly amplifying the most affected communities, helping out the most affected communities. So I think that should be a learning, that should be a learning lesson for many people, to be able to know that climate change is here, and there is no room for divisions if we are all fighting towards the same goal, and if we all want a better future, while some people actually want a better present. And in most cases, those people are in the global south.
Yes. Are there other climate activist leaders from the global south that you look to as leaders, as people you can learn from? Who else do you look to in the global south?
Well, when it comes to the global south, there's so many activists that's so motivating. For example, Helen Gualinga. I think she's from Ecuador, something like that. Have you heard of her?
Mm-mm. No, I'm writing her name down.
Yeah, Helena Gualinga. I'm sure you'll find her. She's really an amazing activist. And also Lysipriya, she's from India. She's a She's also a climate activist. She's 8 years old, and many other activists. And then from Africa, Davis Rubens Sekamwa. He's from Uganda. Plus many other activists across the global south. I find all of them very inspiring.
Mm.
I
Why?
mean,
Pardon?
no, I'm just saying. I mean, I could mention like so many names. Edwin, Evelyn, like there's so many.
Maybe you can send me a list and I'll add it to the YouTube description. Why do you think it is that your generation Z is able to be so influential so young? Because I think that there's been no previous generations where people who were 9 or 11 or even 23 made such an influence, had such a powerful voice. Why do you think your generation has that power?
I think this is simply because we are clear about the demands that we want, and we are not afraid to point out the mess that has been created by the leaders, and we are not afraid to demand for the action from the leaders. So I think the fact that this generation, people are so focused and determined, and they know exactly what they want, and they are not ready to stop at any point soon. So I think this has really pushed the movement and made it so powerful, and made it so clear about what they want and what they want the government leaders to do.
Hmm. Do you think that your generation could have that kind of impact without the internet and social media?
Oh, well, yeah, you are right when it comes to the internet and social media. It has also played a very big role when it comes to the climate movement, because with the internet, we are able to reach out to many people, and many people are able to see how much activism is going on from different parts of the world. So I think even the social media and internet has really played a big role in the climate activism.
On the other hand, a problem in the West, especially in the States, is that teenagers, especially girls, are increasingly anxious and depressed. And academics blame social media because then the girls think, oh, I don't look like that person, or my body image is not like that photoshopped, polished photograph. So my question is, do you see around you and peers that girls and boys are more anxious and depressed? And if so, does it have anything to do with the phone in their hand all the time?
Well, I think that's something that's seen before, and of course, it's as a result of social media. Social media comes with its negativity as well, and this basically depends on how you approach it and how you are using it. I think that if you're using social media, maybe for such a cause like climate change or any other causes that people are doing to make the world a better place. I think the focus can be so much focused on what you want to achieve, but less on what people say about you. Because as an activist, of course, there's been so much negativity, there's been so much trolling, but at the end of the day, you just focus on what you are going to do. But I think what causes anxiety, maybe depression in some of the young people's lives when it comes to social media is because they end up admiring maybe how other people live their lives, or how wealthy they are, or how good they dress, or what they eat, and how they literally spend their lives. And they realize that I also want that life, but I cannot achieve that life. And some of them, many times, they are pushed to find out ways of getting that life, regardless of how much it affects them. So I think the best way for a young person to approach social media is by doing it by having a cause that you're working on, and also it's good for parents or guardians to help out when it comes to young people and social media. It is good to follow up on what your child is doing and who they are talking to. That is very important,
Uh,
because when you do, you are able to trace any kind of anxiety or depression at an early stage.
do you see that in your peers in Uganda? It's not just a Western problem, the body image, the anxiety, depression.
Well, I've seen it as well in my country, but I must say I've seen it more dominant in the Western countries. But I've also seen it in my country where girls are, especially girls, they are so disturbed by maybe how they look or their physical appearance, the body or their face, and they want to make changes. Some of them want to become light skinned, so you find that many of them are pushed to make decisions that actually end up endangering their lives.
Hmm, that's sad. Um, when when I think about activism in the past, like feminism, books were really important. Like in the second wave of the women's movement, people read Simone de Beauvoir and Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem. But in this wave of activism and feminism, I don't hear books mentioned very often as being influential. I hear social media or media figures like um, uh, Greta or the something like that. I mean, are there books that have influenced you in your thinking?
Well, I'm someone who is really learning how to read. I'm not so. It's not something that I grew up doing, and I think books really play a very big role when it comes to movements, because sometimes books are written down by people who have already done movements in the past, and they clearly explain how you can go about a movement, how you can build a grassroots movement. So it's really helpful, and I think they are so important in the fight against any kind of issue in society. But I think the fact that social media dominates, I think it's because many young people were born in the age of social media, in the age of the internet, and they feel like they can get like everything from the internet. You can just can how can I start a social movement, and you read about that and find out steps and ways. So I think they feel like reading a book would take so much time. So I think it's because many people were born in the age, or they grew up in the age of social media.
Right. What about in rural areas in Uganda? What percent of families or schools have access to internet and computers and smartphones?
No, it's really very low, because the rural communities that I've visited, and very few people actually. I think if actually literally many families, you find that no one owns a smartphone. They just have very tiny phones that as long as I can make a call, as long as I can send maybe a text message, that is okay for me. So many people from rural communities don't have access to a smartphone and definitely no access to the internet.
So how do you reach them? I mean, that's really the issue. Do you go visit schools and talk in person, or how does one reach young people in rural areas?
Yes. Now I'll speak again about the project that I'm working on. The first two schools that we've so far worked on, they're in rural communities, and I'm very specific about the schools that I choose, and this has helped me, of course, reach out to people in those communities where people don't have access to internet, don't have access to phones. So you find that with this project, we are able to speak to students, we're able to speak to their teachers, and we're also able to speak to their parents. So that is one of the ways that we reach out to the rural communities in my country.
Hmm. It seems like one of the projects that's done widely in rural areas is tree planting. Is that something that you've been involved with?
No, I haven't really got involved in a tree planting project before.
Mm-hmm. It seems that's something that schools could do, have their own vegetable garden and trees, and it would teach students by doing and by eating that we can be self-sufficient in this way.
Yeah, some of
I
the schools have. No, I just wanted to say that some of the schools have those maybe small gardens and the learning experiences for some children, and they understand how important trees are, especially trees that have fruits as well. So they know that we can even get something to eat from this.
yeah. What do you see yourself doing 5 years from now? Any changes or steady state?
5 years from now, of course, I hope to continue be doing climate activism. I think that maybe by that time the organization would have developed and would have quite a number of projects to work on. So I see myself work on so many projects within the organizations and actually building resilience in communities and bringing transition in communities.
Mm-hmm. It's exciting. What do you do for fun to kind of charge your batteries in the face of all this work? What's fun for you?
I think that is watching, but I'm so specific about what I watch. I think I can watch for like 2 hours a day, so I think that's what I can do for fun. Watch television, maybe watch a drama or a TV series. Yeah.
How much of the TV comes from the West or from Nigeria, or where? What are the most popular kind of fictional shows?
When you find that everyone has their preferences, you find that someone may want something from Nigeria, or someone may want something from Ghana, or someone may want something from Mexico, or
Hmm.
someone may want something from, from the United States. So there are so many preferences when it comes to television series, and I think when it comes to me personally, I love series from Mexico. I find them very interesting.
The novellas, they're like, uh, what do you call it? Soap
Yeah,
operas?
yeah, they're like soap operas.
And do you understand Spanish or are they translated?
They translate it.
How many languages do you speak?
I speak two languages, English and my home language is called Uganda, but I know some basic French as well.
Ah, très bien fait. J'aime la française. C'est une langue très très belle. um, is there anything else that you would like to see included in this discussion that we've left out in terms of how to be an effective organizer, the role of young people and girls, or anything else that you would think is important that we haven't touched on?
I'm really not so sure. I think we've literally tackled many things.
Okay. Thank you.